We have apologies for absence, Mayor, from Councillor Susan Hinchcliffe, Councillor Jane Scully and Councillor Denise Jeffrey, and also just to formally note, Mayor, that Councillor Dake is here as an observer.
Thank you so much. And declarations of interest. Do members have any interest they wish to declare in any item on this agenda? No, thank you all so much. Item 3, exclusion of press and public. I understand there are no exempt items today, which means we can press on as normal, Miles? Super, thank you. Okay, moving on. As we have done with the main committees, what I'd like to see is more of a show of hands so we get greater clarity on decision making when we come to recommendations, if that's okay. So, item 4, minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of September. Any members have any comments or questions? Are we content to confirm these as an accurate record? We are. Thank you so much. Moving on to item 5, organisational performance 2025-26, quarter 2 updates. And if I can just open with a few comments, that the last few months have brought challenges for delivery, and I want to thank colleagues for continued focus and resilience. As the report shows, performance is mixed, with strong progress in areas like creative industries, housing delivery, bus franchising, but with some areas also requiring improvement. These reflect market pressures and funding uncertainty, which we should acknowledge. I am encouraged by achievements such as the launch of the new CA website with progress on healthy working life and endorsement of the White Rose Forest Plan, all significant steps forward. We're keen to see improvement where performance has dipped, and I am reassured by the mitigations in place, including multi-year planning and work to address market failure. This will strengthen delivery as we move into quarter 3. And finally, the report highlights the need to keep embedding innovation and learning into our programmes. And as you've heard us speak before, if something is not working, we need to be confident to move that money elsewhere. We do not want to sit on projects that are not delivering on our ambitious outcomes, and certainly the outcomes that the people of West Yorkshire expect. So if I could ask Sarah Eaton, please, our Director of Strategy, Comms and Intelligence, take us through the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and you've picked up some of my key points, so I'll try not to kind of duplicate, but obviously this paper is an end of quarter 2 update, so that's end of September 2025. As colleagues know, that we've identified 25 key priorities for delivery against the kind of the 5 West Yorkshire Plan missions, and we have a 6th mission, which is around being an ambitious organisation, high-performing organisation. As the Mayor has just mentioned, there's a mixed picture at quarter 2, and I think I said last year at this particular point in time, we always see kind of a dip at quarter 2, and that's because at quarter 1 we're kind of implementing our plans. At quarter 2 we tend to kind of hit this kind of position where we get a better understanding of whether or not we're moving in the right direction. So I think this is very similar to the position that we were in last year at this particular point in time. I think as you can see in table 2, we've got a number of missions where this is impacting more broadly. So mission 2, 3, 4 and kind of high performing organisation. I think if you look at table graph 1, where we've actually got 329 KPIs, so it's very easy for a number of KPIs to kind of have a little bit of an impact on kind of those missions. But if I just put some of this in context, of the 329 KPIs, there's 38, that's 11.5%, which have now been completed, which is, I think, is good progress. 63.2%, which are kind of on track for delivery, and of those 329, there's about 18% which are currently not on track, and about 2.5% that we're thinking at this stage are not deliverable for a number of reasons, and I'll come on to that in a little while. And some of this is around potentially not being able to kind of hit the milestones that we've set ourselves. It might be that there's some slippage in there into various other quarters. And I think one of the benefits that we've got by having a 4-year corporate plan now is that looking over that longer term, so that there is something around not just focused on the year, but how are we delivering beyond this current year, which we'll probably come on to. So just in terms of good performance. Just highlight a couple of extra bits that perhaps you've not picked up. Around bush franchising, we obviously launched round 1 procurement process and invitations to tender, which is a huge significant milestone, I think, for the combined authority, and that's following a significant amount of work to get into that position. A number of super bus schemes were launched, I think earlier than anticipated, so Leeds to Keighley, Keighley Town and Halifax to Huddersfield. We're actually looking now at a 4th scheme in Wakefield. As you mentioned, around creative industries, the You Can Make It Here programme has now supported over 725 creative organisations, so again, excellent progress being made in that space. And I think we've also launched and started moving into delivery on the Healthy Working Life Board, and if colleagues recall, that's been a really kind of short timescales for kind of taking that work forward, but something that's become a really big priority for the combined authority and our partners. So some significant progress in getting that programme up and running into place. And there's some really good progress around Home Energy West Yorkshire around exploring options for a climate fund and a Home Energy West Yorkshire loan fund that are really getting us into that kind of innovative space, I think, that you mentioned earlier on. And then we've also launched the Local Remediation Acceleration Plan, and that's an area of work that we were given from government towards the beginning of this year. So again, something that we've taken on that's had to move quite quickly. And I would also want to point out some of the really great work that's happening, particularly around supporting victims and tackling reoffending. So there's a number of areas that are really progressing well, and we've let new contracts, so really good progress in that space. I think in terms of the areas where, just to signal around identifying as at risk to delivery and potentially not achievable against their original timescales, and I think we talked about some of these last time round. So the West Yorkshire Housing Partnership's had a target to deliver 1,500 homes, where we're installing solar panels by the end of Q4. And I think as we've been charting through the beginning of this process, I think this was one that was flagging last time round in Q1. We've not been able to kind of meet those targets and milestones for a number of reasons, particularly due to kind of market failure in that particular area. And we're looking at a revised approval to kind of reduce the scheme's deliverables in that space, because we know that with those challenges we're not going to be able to hit the target that we set ourselves at the beginning of the year. We also know that in terms of some of the work on bus franchising, there'll be some really great work moving forward to get us to this particular point. But we're also now looking into phase 2 and particularly thinking around how we start to deliver our customer service implementation. And I think what we're looking at there is bringing some work forward around particularly that customer service stream. So that's an area where we're currently looking at mitigations to kind of accelerate activity in that particular area, because that's one where is perhaps operating slightly below our timelines in that space. And also kind of looking at our funding strategies, and there's 2 actually there, particularly around bus franchising and mass transit longer term funding strategies, and work's in progress there, which I think Kate will allude to in report next, which is around establishing a funding model that will support these areas of work moving forward. And then also, I think, which was flagged last time round, is work around our new asset delivery model. And I think that's been an area where we've been awaiting data around building condition surveys. We've also made some recruitments in this space now. It's been an area where we've not had the necessary resources and capability, and that has now been actioned, and we're expecting that to kind of move forward in Q4. So there's been a little bit of slippage around that particular activity. And obviously around mass transit, we were expecting to launch the next round of consultation by the end of Q4, and there's some review work taking place at the moment, which means that we won't hit that deadline. So at the end of Q2, what you'll see that there's of those 25 priorities and kind of just looking at those individual KPIs, I think there are 14 that are on target and achievable, and 11 that currently aren't, and that's a mixture of those indicators that we've just talked about. But pleased to say at the end of October, we've just done our latest round, which is a midterm kind of review by the time we get to Q3, and we know that one of those areas has moved back into being achievable. So we are going to get some movement over this next quarter, I suspect, which we'll be able to report back on when we come to see you next. I think you should highlight there's a number of themes that are emerging in this space, particularly around kind of that market failure. I think also around kind of management of financial risk. There's the scale of kind of the change that's underway at the moment is quite significant, and we've got some really major programmes in place, and some of this we've been awaiting the quantum for the integrated settlement. That's placed some uncertainty there. Pleased to say that we've now got some details of that which will allow us to kind of progress towards the end of this year, but that has meant that the organisation's had to sequence and prioritise some of its activity, and also that innovation that you talked about there around testing innovative practice. The paper sets out some of the things that we're doing in this space. Our multi-year business and budget planning, I think, has been incredibly helpful as we kind of mature in that space in terms of identifying kind of where we need to move forward and where we need to sequence delivery more effectively. And I think we'll see that move from strength to strength as we go through. But I think what the report does is highlight where we currently are at this period, and obviously transparently where we're looking to mitigate those risks as we move forward into the next quarter. So I'll stop speaking there and just open it.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and certainly that transparency about trying things and then moving monies elsewhere efficiently. And the whole story, particularly around solar panels, etc., you know, the retrofit work is going really well in other areas. So Home Energy West Yorkshire is currently live, and we're going to be having a big push on Message the Mayor when I do the BBC next week. And also I'm pleased that I've been pressed by the members of the public about SMEs when it comes to access to those contracts for bus franchising, and I'm pleased that we're still on track to open that out and have an offer that is sympathetic to SMEs in this space. But like you say, we have been waiting for government's quantum on integrated settlement, so it has been sort of moving slightly blindly over the last quarter until we get those figures for the long term. So any questions for Sarah on this Q2 performance? No? Okay, that's great, thank you. So are members content to note Q2 performance against key performance indicators for 25-26? Thank you very much. So moving on to item 6, 25-26 Q2 financial performance. This is an update on Q2 financial performance. As the report confirms, we're forecasting to deliver a balanced position overall, despite some in-year pressures that have arisen. Revisions to 25-26 budget are proposed to reflect the change in capitalisation approach previously reported to the board. This ensures it provides a more accurate comparator for in-year performance. However, I am encouraged by the progress set out in the paper, from strong investment income performance to the continued delivery of major capital programmes across housing and transport. And I know we're all really keen to see further improvement in areas where adverse variances remain. And I'm reassured by the mitigations in place, including reprofiling activity, multi-year planning to strengthen financial resilience. And also the report highlights the importance of refreshing our medium-term financial plan, particularly in relation to the future challenges outlined in 26-27 budget paper later on in the agenda. I'm also pleased to see the authority continues to embed robust treasury management practices. All of these are absolutely vital if we're to remain sustainable and deliver the outcomes that people expect. So if I could ask Kate Taylor, our Director of Finance and Commercial Services, take us through the recommendations, please. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Mayor. As set out, this is our second update of the year for the 25-26 financial year and gives an overview of the financial performance against revenue and capital budget, as well as the update against our treasury management indicators. As has been set out, we have proposed a revised 25-26 budget that restates that budget to make it more accurate for reporting purposes. That has a net adverse impact of 11.3 million through writing out that change to the approach in capitalisation that has been balanced through a combination of reduced expenditure, both through planned and through in-year movement, increased enterprise zone income, and a small reduction in the proposed transfer to reserves. The budget has also been restated to include £35 million of grant income with matching expenditure that came in post the budget being approved. This revised budget is required to be approved by the combined authority, and it is proposed that the FRCC takes that forward today, that we will put that as part of the January paper in the approved budget. The in-year revenue position is currently showing a surplus of 20.3 million against a projected budget deficit. This is due to timing differences between when we expected income and expenditure to be occurred against when it has actually happened. However, the forecast position in Table 3 shows that these variances net off to have no impact on the bottom line by the year end. The Q2 revenue forecast shows an overall balanced position. Improved investment income forecast of 2.2 million is offsetting small adverse variances in the delivery directorates. The Economy Directorate is showing a 1.3 staffing pressure due to delays in grant-funded activity taking place. Since the forecast has been prepared, work has been ongoing amongst the teams, and much of that has now been mitigated. The English National Concessionary Travel Scheme continues to be a pressure, with demand for this exceeding what we have in budget, but those are being managed. Pay costs have got a true deficit of 0.8 million as a result of low turnover, which is reflected in the HRQ2 MI data. All of these in-year pressures are being reviewed to understand what the impact is going forward and will be the impact into 26-27 budget. Capital spend overall continues to track well against the approved budget, with a forecast spend of 418 million against a budget of 432 million. The represents spend against both a CA and district delivered schemes. Year-to-date expenditure at Q2 is 143 million, which requires a significant step change in performance in the final half of the financial year to achieve the current forecast. Detail on the programmes is provided in a report, so I won't repeat that. And finally, the Q2 Treasury Management Report shows compliance against all of our Treasury Management indicators for the year.
Thank you. It's very good to see that the capital is working well. 418 million, it shows the partnership working between ourselves and local authorities. When we do it the West Yorkshire way, in partnership and collaboration, we can get that money out the door. Could I just ask a couple of questions? The revenue pressures, the Economy Directorate income is 17.1 million below budget due to delays in investment zones and skills programmes. Now, both of those things are a priority for us. Is that because the delays in the money coming in from government, or the delays in identifying projects? What's causing that delay, and how can we resolve that?
Certainly two slightly different differences in slightly different reasons, in there. So certainly from the skills perspective, sometimes there is a timing difference. So we receive money in financial years, we actually deliver activity in an academic year. So the teams have got mitigating plans for actually delivering and getting that activity back on track to make sure that that money is spent within the academic year, which starts from September to kind of end of August, as you will know, the academic year, versus when we receive that information. So the team have got mitigations, and it is about just getting that activity and getting the providers able to support through there. Within the investment zones, there have been some delays in getting the business cases through in there to release the funding in there, but teams are working through, and I think there are some due to come through to the Combined Authority in early 26.
That's great, because that attracts private funding as well, so we've got to get that on track. Also, there is an understanding of the concessions and the potential modelling for an increased surge in, once Weaver comes in, of people who were concessionary pass holders coming back, because that's obviously a financial pressure.
Yes, so that's so the English National Concessionary Travel Scheme is pretty much our only statutory demand-led budget that we have within the Combined Authority finances. There are two factors in there. We have had, while increase in the patronage of people taking out that scheme, which is obviously very good that people are using the buses, and also a small increase in the reimbursement rate as well, which is what we pay to operators for carrying those passengers through, and you'll see later that has been factored into the 26-27 budget through there. So it's one of those, it's a financial pressure, but positive, I think, in the sense that we have more passengers travelling.
We definitely need to up the footfall, absolutely. Any questions from Kate's presentation? Yes, Councillor Dacre. You're an observer, but please do, because you're representing Calderdale as well, so please do.
Yes, thank you. So 3 questions. I'm assuming that the MTFP will come along with the draft budget on the 4th of December. Have you got any early, immediate comments on the impact of the integrated settlement that you've now received? And thirdly, just a more particular one, again about the investment zones and risks of match funding are mentioned. Is that because the business cases are just taking longer so you don't know, or is it that testing the market has suggested it's going to be difficult to get that match funding? What does that actually mean?
Please, Kate.
Thank you. In terms of the MTFP, yes, that will come. So there will become a cut that comes forward alongside the budget in January for that, and when we will then we will be continuing to refine that over kind of the early part of next year. Through there and then continuously through the summer. In terms of that, in terms of the integrated settlement, very welcome. I think in terms of the money that we have, it will certainly be on kind of the economy side. I think it will provide us with some opportunities, I think, within there. What wasn't in the budget and the integrated settlement yesterday was around the bus funding, so we are still waiting to know around that, and obviously that is absolutely critical for us to understand what that figure is.
And the subsequent meeting with the Treasury, we did raise that, and they reassured us that it's imminent. So that's something that we do need. Ben.
Thank you, Chair. To add to Kate's answers, conversations that we've had with officials since the budget announcements yesterday indicate that the bus figures should not be long in arriving, so that we're hoping that won't delay us in terms of the budget setting process, but it's quite critical, as you would expect. On investment zones, it's ascribed to the business case. There's a lot of work going on, particularly in relation to the old medical school in Leeds, and the plans now that building is in private ownership for taking that forward under the investment zone model. So that is those commercial elements that are taking a bit of time.
Thank you. Any further comments? Okie doke. So are members content to note the revenue and capital financial positions at 30th of September 2025? We are. Are we happy to note the Q2 forecast positions for revenue and capital? Note the update on the medium-term financial plan. Note the Treasury Management update for Q2. Thank you. And finally, recommend approval to the Combined Authority that the outlined budget changes are adopted. Thank you all so much. Okay, moving on. HR management information Q2 25-26, including the pay gap reports. I know that creating that fair and inclusive workplace is central to all of our values, and I want to thank colleagues for continued commitment to equality and diversity. As the report confirms, it's positive progress on reducing pay gaps. The gender pay gap continues to narrow. For the second year running, the median pay gap is 0, which is a significant achievement, but there are also examples of increased pay for female colleagues in senior roles, which reflects the impact of our development and our promotion initiatives. We're reporting on our disability pay gap for the first time in 2025, and this isn't statutory, but something that we are very keen to monitor. And we know there's more to do. While the ethnicity pay gap are moving in the right direction, the forecast shows without further interventions, these gaps will not close as quickly as we want. That's why the next steps, including a full analysis and action plan developed with our staff networks, is so important. I'm encouraged by the improvements in our diversity profile, a real priority for me, and the success of recent recruitment campaigns which have brought in new talent and supported internal progression. Vital steps towards our ambition to be a national leader in equality, diversity and inclusion. Could I ask Jo Dent, our Assistant Director for People and Transformation, to take us through the recommendations, please?
Thank you, Chair. So, as you can see from the HR management information, we are still consistently managing our HR key indicators. The information shown around our sickness, our employee turnover and as already mentioned, in terms of our pay gap reports, our diversity are going in the right direction, and we continue to monitor them really, really closely. We also can report a continuation of positive internal recruitment and promotion in terms of how we're actually developing our people, as well as bringing in new talent into the organisation. And based on the fact that we're embracing quite a lot of change in the integrated settlement and how we're maintaining, this is really important to us, and it's going to be really key that we can maintain these statistics as we go forward. As the report says, the reporting on the data for the pay gap and disability, and the reports have just come through to us. We will now establish working groups and actually report through our EDI steering group in terms of how we actually develop actions. As we reported at the last quarter, we're really strongly developing our workforce planning that's really quite detailed into each directorate, and probably more detail than we've gone to before. That's how we will look to address this. We'll actually go through and find out our organisation. We need to maybe particularly address certain areas and put action plans together and work as an organisation to actually address that. I think the other thing is we still have a growing problem in people who are less comfortable in reporting to us their personal data. So it's an ongoing thing that we continue to address as part of our induction, trying to build confidence in our employees, build trust, that actually tries to help encourage them share that data with us, because that's really important in terms of how we can actually put the action plans in place. We're also looking at developing which is early stages, but much more informal ways of having places where people can share information and having independent people who can come and talk about, particularly in the current world right now where there's quite a lot of pressures and people are feeling stresses and strains for all manner of reasons. And we're hoping that by doing having those kind of interventions, we'll encourage people that they can trust us with their data. But that is an ongoing and growing, I'm afraid, situation for us. Yeah, that's the main thing I wanted to report. Thank you, Mary. If anybody's got any further questions on the reports.
Also, what's really important to keep a weather eye on is intersectionality. So it's about diversity, gender, sexuality as well, and that we need to make sure that we're not just in our own sort of silo about gender pay gap, for example, and that how that impacts on colleagues who are, across many protected characteristics.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. We are looking at that intersectionality as well, and this is the first time that we've done that, so we'll grow in maturity for that too. But that's reported on in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions to Jo? Yes, Councillor Dacre. I'm glad you came today. You're the only one asking questions.
Thank you, Chair. So, yes, that intersectionality data was really interesting and just shows how complicated it is to try to address these issues. My head of HR suggested that you might do something, she called it a pulse survey, I don't know what that means, to try to help you gather data on why people are not wanting to give this identification information. So I don't know if you have how you're trying to gather information about that. Does it get discussed in one-to-ones at the moment to try to ask people why they're not? And just before you come back, I noticed you still have, I think I might have raised this in audit or somewhere, you've still got 9% of sickness reasons which are unknown, which doesn't seem acceptable, that it can be recorded in that way.
Thank you. Jo?
Thank you, Councillor Dacre. Yes, so we try to address the people not wanting to share data induction, because it's actually new people joining us that are struggling more with that rather than existing employees. We also pick this up through our surveys that we do annually and any other interventions, and through our personal supervision, through our line management, in terms of trying to encourage people in terms of building trust, but we'll always welcome any other or new learning that other people have because I would imagine this is not unique to us. So I think that anything that people are doing are very welcome to share. And also in terms of the sickness, so again, picking this up through our line management and personal supervision, in terms of people returning to work. And a lot of it is the short term, where people don't need to particularly provide a fit note, but that doesn't mean to say that it's not something that we encourage and expect our line managers to welcome people back into the workplace after they've been off, no matter how long. So that is something that has been picked up and continually been picked up through our personal supervision. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, Ben?
Thank you, Chair. So I wanted to flag maybe three things. There's a link between Kate's financial performance report and Joe's HR report, which we are going to try and address in future months, around how they both merge in terms of organisational efficiency and effectiveness. So work is being done in terms of what are the right metrics to represent that. It's quite challenging for many parts of our organisation in order to provide meaningful metrics, but we're on with that and we want to bring something forward early next year. It was probably also in relation to the workforce, to be remiss of me not to mention that we've had a positive strike ballot from a union, and they are and Joe I'm going to turn to Joe to give a bit more details, but I'll keep waffling to give you time to prepare. But with action short of strike planned from early December, and strike action planned by union members for the weekend before Christmas. So Joe, I don't know if you wanted to add any more on that in terms of what the employer side is doing.
Yes, thank you, Ben. Absolutely. So we are, there's a number of things we're doing. First of all, we're continuing to engage with the trade unions and talk with them, and we have another meeting with them, a formal meeting with them on Monday, to try and keep options open to resolve this particular situation. I think the other thing that's really important to mention is the passenger transport forum there are three members, so we need to actually, whatever solutions we put together, we need to make sure we agree them with Transport for Greater Manchester and the West Midlands Combined Authority. So we're also working really closely with them to make sure that we actually are really trying to come up with solutions, because all of us have got actually different challenges and different types of, the workforce is made up of different people. Internally, we've got strike action working groups, which we are specifically concentrating on the tasks rather than the people, the tasks that we know are really critical to us, and identifying what they are so that we can put some contingency plans in, both out in our bus stations where we've got where we need to look after our customers, and roles here within Wellington House. The strike dates are the 19th to the 21st of December, so that's going to include a very, very busy weekend, so that's intentional. And the action short of strike goes on for much longer periods of time across the new year. And I would report that this has been going on in Transport for Greater Manchester for a couple of months already now, and the action short of strike has caused them far greater problems than strike days, and so that's where we're also trying to focus our energy in terms of identifying those particular key activities and then putting contingency plans around them so that we can try and make sure we deliver the service. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Ben?
It's a separate point, so there's nothing else
please.
on. So the third thing I was going to raise is just for members to be aware that, again, with regard to the HR report, we are undertaking some works in December to place more desks in Wellington House, so there will be some disruption as we are doing that work, but in effect that is to create more capacity within the building that we've currently got. And currently the mass transit team are based externally and they're being brought into the organisation. So it is all part of having more capacity in this building to make better use of the space and encourage team working and cross-team working within the building wherever we can.
And that saves us money, doesn't it, on another
It does, yes.
office? Great. Okay, thank you. Any further comments? No? Lovely. Are members content to note the information provided relating to the CA's workforce? We are. Great, thank you. So moving on to item 8, 2026-27 draft budget. I know the scale of planning required for next year's budget is massively significant, and this year's process has been more challenging as we're awaiting details of the integrated settlement. Like we've said, we have everything now apart from our bus funding, and these papers were published last week, so there's no opportunity to amend them. But I wonder if Kate, as I come to you, you can take us through some of the headlines. And as the report confirms, we're managing some significant pressures, but we also have real and genuine opportunities ahead. The integrated business planning process is well underway. The proposed budget is ready to move forward for consultation. More work to be done to confirm our priorities ahead of the budget setting in January. So on that note, can I invite Kate Taylor to take us through the report and recommendations? Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, as you set out, this does not reflect the welcome announcements yesterday in the budget for there, and as has been reported previously to committee, the integrated settlement quantum was a key interdependency in our process in there. So the delays on that have impacted the process, which is outlined in the paper, and that's really pleasing that we now kind of surge on through there. We have done the internal planning process, and that has identified a number of pressures that are outlined in the report, and that is giving, at the time when we published this report, an unmitigated deficit of 60 million. The majority of the pressures outlined within there are sitting within transport. So we've talked around the ENCS pressure that is in. We have £4.4 million pressure that is seen within there for it. And also we have some risk around some activity that has historically been funded by our BSIP money, so our bus service improvement plan money for it. So understanding the continuation of that funding and what that quantum is will allow us to make choices about what activity we choose to go into in the future and how that supports our transport network. The economy pressures are similarly due to they are driving through the end of some of our existing grant funded programmes, particularly in the areas of local growth, with an associated impact as well into some of our corporate areas where we have staff that have been supporting work in that area. Yesterday's announcement of new revenue funding, particularly through the local growth fund, will allow us to recalibrate that and hopefully mitigate those pressures going forward through there. In terms of statutory requirements, we have a statutory requirement to set out the mayoral budget, to put that forward to the CA and to open that for a period of scrutiny and consultation. That final budget will then be part of our January budget that goes to the combined authority for approval. So it is approved by the 1st of February and meets our statutory deadline. That budget is set out in here. It is purely an expenditure budget in this case for it. So because we haven't got income in there, we are not setting out how we might spend that on activity. So it is a relatively statutory requirement for us in terms of that, but it does fulfil our statutory duty. The other key piece of information in there for this report is that when we put the bus franchising case through, and as outlined in last year's budget report, we agreed to increase the transport levy by 2% to support the bus franchising model, and that is our planning assumption for 26-27, and we will be continuing on, and our budget that goes forward in January will include that assumption. The next steps will be to work through what the announcements yesterday meant for us and the implications, and we will be continuing to work with leaders and key officer groups over the rest of this calendar year to close that gap and look to be able to present a balanced budget for 26-27 for approval in January 26, and then also looking forward around what that means for the future, because excitingly we do have the first year multi-settlement, so we can actually start to look forward in there. But yeah.
Thank you. And it is really pleasing to see government's confidence in West Yorkshire as a region, that we are a mayoral strategic authority and we've been seen to be a good place for pilot investment as well. So I do appreciate the hard work that everybody's done up to now. Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Jocelyn.
A couple of things. Firstly, as I'm not privy to the information that was given to you yesterday, you're saying that you're aiming for a balanced budget, but it's no longer an unmitigated proposed deficit of 60 million. What ballpark are we talking about now?
So the reality of our budget is ultimately we deliver. It's almost a shrinking. We have our corporate centre, which is effectively the cost of running the organisation. Then what we do, we ultimately shrink that activity quite often to fit the money that we have been given by government. We're in a slightly strange position this year, or in a more vulnerable position, because we are at the end of the SR. So that means it's like a cliff edge of funding in terms of that, and we're now resetting that through. We have some current programmes like UK SPF, for example, that have been large in the economy area. Those are coming to an end. We are now getting £19 million of revenue money, for example, that is coming through last year. We can certainly make sure the quantums were published yesterday on the government website, so we can make sure that members have got sight of that. For it. In terms of the bus funding number, we're waiting to see that, but again, I would hope and expect to be in the region of what we have received historically for that, so it should allow us to plug that gap. If not, we will need to look at what we do and how we might shrink that within the available envelope. So that the other piece in there is, from my perspective, when we get the income in, we just need to run that through some of our central budgets as well, in terms of what that does for some of our capital financing, for example, and our debt and investment cases.
So just to drill down into that, have you got any idea of ballpark deficit?
I mean, I would expect us to get to a point where we are balanced for next year. So I think, kind of in terms of what we have got now, I think we still have probably a ongoing pressure of around 10 million per annum within transport that we need to erode out. So with the transport pressures, there are around 10 million that are kind of BAU statutory within the ENC space, and then around 40 in terms of local choice. So I think we're probably carrying around 10 million on transport that we need to look at how we do that sustainably. But on the other side of the business, I would expect us to be able to now balance through.
Thank you. Jocelyn, you have another question?
Yes, and basically it's on that point about how leaders are privy to this information, but other members of this committee are not. And so can I ask that we are also circulated with that information so that we can contribute more effectively in this meeting?
Thank you. That we'll definitely take that away. Obviously, it was late night last night. I mean, I think it was 7 o'clock and we were still looking at the lines on the screen. But yes, of course, I do take the point. Ben?
Just to say, Sarah's team produced a budget overview which we can share to members.
Good stuff, thank you. Any further comments or questions? No, thank you. Okay, are members content to note the approach and work to date on the 26-27 budget, including priorities, funding assumptions, risks and opportunities? Thank you. Are we content to review the proposed draft mayoral budget for 26-27 for consultation and scrutiny prior to approval in January 2026? Thank you. And note that the 26-27 budget will incorporate a 2% increase on the transport levy to support bus franchising. Thank you to local authority partners for that. And note the work continuing in December to develop a balanced 26-27 budget for approval by the CA in January 2026. Thank you all so much. Brilliant. We've rattled through the agenda. I'm very grateful for the time that you've taken to pore over the papers and to ask questions. And of course, as always, any further questions, please don't hesitate to ask my office or Kate if there's something specific that has just come to you as you're leaving. So thank you so much, and remind members of the date of the next meeting, the 12th of March, the first day of spring, 2026. And thank you so much. And now if we can close the meeting, Miles, thank you.